When the melodies are gone and you don't hear a song. Shout out to Angel Joynice requested this video. This is Whitney Houston, the rise and fall of America's sweetheart. Now, when it comes to Whitney Houston, it's a lot of speculation to her death for the simple fact that she passed away kind of similar to her daughter, and that didn't really sit right with me. I did a also did a Michael Jackson reaction. I think that was yesterday, and from what they were saying, they were supposed to be together, and I think that would have been dope. Like I think that would have been dope to have Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston together. So let me know what y'all think on the whole thing, and without further ado, we're gonna get straight into the video.
Just look at me. Look out. Just look at me. I am changing.
Such a beautiful voice.
Whitney Houston has one of the most recognizable voices
That's
in
a
the
fact.
history of pop music. With a career spanning over 2 decades, she was able to establish herself as a diva known globally for her unique vocal talent. But beyond the voice, the evolution of her persona as an African American artist enjoying international fame remains very intriguing. Whitney Houston's experience as a music artist in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s tells a lot about what minority artists reaching fame were authorized, forbidden, and compelled to do at different points in time in order to be palatable to the largest audience possible. What did Whitney Houston's persona and artistry represent in American culture? And how did her prominence as a minority artist affect her personally? A decade after her death, her career reveals a great deal about America and how it's envisioned itself over the past 30 years. And it tells just as much, if not more, about how much minority artists seeking global stardom had to sacrifice to be promoted on a grand scale and be embraced by the masses. Whitney Houston was born in Newark, New Jersey, on August 9th, 1963.
Oh,
From
I keep forgetting she was born in Jersey. Like nobody really mentions that too heavy. Like I keep forgetting she was born in Jersey.
infancy, it appeared as though she was meant to be a singer. Several of her family members were renowned personalities in gospel, soul, and pop music, including her mother Cissy Houston, who served as choir minister at New Hope Baptist Church, where a young Whitney Houston began her career. She was noticed thanks to her uncanny ability to captivate audiences, even as a youngster, and she later told Diane Sawyer that a euphoric reaction from the church at New Hope had a profound influence on her. Quote, "I think I knew then that my singing ability was an infectious thing that God had given me." End quote. Cissy Houston had some reservations about her daughter becoming an artist, but she advised her that if she was going to sing, she had best step up. By the time she reached the age of 15, Whitney Houston was frequently performing alongside her mother and pursuing her own record deal. She was eventually found at a nightclub at the age of 19 by Clive Davis of Arista Records, who promptly signed her and guided her career as she transitioned from gospel to pop glory. She made her national TV debut in 1983, performing Home from the musical Louise on Merv Griffin's show, following which she and Clive Davis spent 2 years putting together her debut album, scouting for the greatest producers and composers to showcase her incredible singing abilities. In order to maximize her potential as a recording artist, Clive Davis would not only shape her sound, but also her image as a performer. The 2-year-long preparation of her debut album would be the transitional period during which Nippy from
She
Newark
still looks the
would
same.
transform into Whitney Houston as the public would come to know her. The Whitney Houston persona would be far removed from the edgy princes and Madonnas who rose to stardom around the same time, and would be crafted to exude the conventional kind of glamour that the everyday American looked up to. Whitney Houston's overall attitude in public was also shaped by respectability politics inherited from the previous generation of black women who entered adulthood in the 50s and were told that assimilation was the surest way for African Americans to progress. That previous generation produced many great vocalists who were recognized for their talent but struggled to advance their career in the 80s. Those included Whitney's mother, Cissy, Aretha Franklin, Whitney's godmother, Dionne Warwick, her cousin, and Leontyne Price, yet another cousin. It was an entire generation of singers who reached their ceiling by the time Whitney Houston was set to debut. If she wished to achieve mainstream success in America, if she desired to become a great pop star, Whitney Houston needed to avoid sounding too black. Quote, anything that was too black sounding was sent back to the studio. Arista's former head of promotion, Kenneth Reynolds, explained in the 2018 documentary Whitney, Can I Be Me? Did he mean too raw?
Yeah, cause sounding too black. I don't get that.
Too animated? In any case, he probably meant that it had to sound less like Shaka Khan and more like Barbra Streisand. Whitney Houston's music would be designed so as to cross over to wide audiences and reach mainstream commercial success thanks to a balanced mix of pop and R&B. Her stature was dignified but cool, non-threatening, relatable, and aspirational.
I'm changing, seeing everything so clear.
She had a beautiful voice.
I'm changing, and I'm gonna start right here.
Her 1985 and 1987 self-titled albums were massive successes and
To me, she had that natural look for like a singer and a dancer to me.
made her the first and to this day only artist to have 7 consecutive #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. But Whitney Houston's greatest and most overlooked achievement was to take the vocal styling she learned in the black church and transpose it into the pop arrangements crafted by Arista Records.
Now, your mom is well known as a gospel singer. Why didn't you follow in her footsteps?
Wasn't TLC with Arista Records too?
I did.
Then you took a right turn.
Right, as she did. I don't know. I guess gospel is something that will never leave you, whether you want it to or not. It stays with you for the rest of your life.
Does that gospel filter through your music today?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. There's no way to escape it.
Professor Daphne A. Brooks writes, quote, whereas even the Supremes worked their way up through a Motor City black-owned business that willed them to global stardom against the odds, and whereas a whole slew of niche artists, Natalie Cole on the R&B charts, Donna Summer on the Giorgio Moroder Eurodisco circuit made the leap to the center, it was Whitney who emerged at the very center of 80s pop and then subtly and yet fundamentally changed its landscape forever. She made the aesthetics of black female vocalizing once and for all not only mainstream, as Aretha Franklin had done in the late 60s, but also accessible.
What's that a song? Well, that's my favorite Aretha Franklin song. Take a Look.
to the masses across age groups and across racial groups by delivering the good news of the gospel melisma in shiny pop music deemed universal rather than distinctly African American. End quote. In fact, her success was so astonishing that the New York Times highlighted her achievement as early as 1986. Quote, Whitney Houston is now the best-selling album by a black female vocalist in pop music history, having surpassed Tina Turner's Private Dancer and Donna Summer's Bad Girls, each of which sold over 4 million. The record has also sold more than twice as much as any album by Aretha Franklin, John Warwick, or Diana Ross. End quote. But in retrospect, considering the magnitude of her accomplishment in a media landscape that had historically discriminated against black performers could almost be viewed as vindication for those who preceded her. Whitney Houston had not simply broken through the glass ceiling, she had smashed it. Quote, Whitney was a hammer for all of them. She was part cudgel, part Trojan horse too, a clapback to segregated radio and payola, and silly beauty standards that said a nose was too wide, or a butt too fat, or a complexion just too dark to be worth marketing to white people. End quote. Whitney Houston's triumph in the 80s also marked in the eyes of some the overdue recognition of the African American middle class that had emerged following the achievements of the civil rights movement. Oprah Winfrey began her phenomenally successful nationally syndicated talk show in 1986, whereas comedian Bill Cosby's sitcom about an African-American doctor and lawyer raising their 4 children drew the highest ratings on television for most of the decade. The popularity of The Cosby Show revealed how class-informed perceptions of race in the 80s. Middle-class African-Americans found new doors open to them around that time, but poor and working-class black people faced continued challenges. In the midst of the Reagan era, with its war on drugs, its documentaries about the breakdown of the black family unit, and its fear of the quote-unquote welfare queens, supposedly indolent black women living in broken homes, Whitney Houston, a black girl raised in a Christian 2-parent household, embodied an alternative expression of blackness that allowed the public at large to believe the American dream had become a reality for middle-class African Americans. But black critics suggested that she had sold out. Al Sharpton dubbed her Whitey Whitney and advocated boycotting her. According to the essayist Trey Ellis, author of The New Black Aesthetic, Whitney Houston's 1987 single I Wanna Dance With Somebody sounded as if she had applied Porcelana Fade Cream to her once extremely soulful throat. She had become part of a group of quote-unquote cultural mulatto, assimilationist nightmares, nurtured mutations instead of thriving hybrids. She was also predictably overlooked by establishment rock critics little interested in her race, her gender, or the pop music genre that she dominated. And that vision of Whitney Houston as unrepresentative of black culture quickly spread, maybe because her success was so big and so unexpected. Regardless, the crowd booed her when she was called at the 1989 Soul Train Awards.
Why?
Where do broken hearts go? Whitney Houston.
Due to her crossover
That's
appeal,
crazy.
she battled with acceptance from the R&B community during the late 80s when, ironically, she helped move the R&B genre to a broader top 40 audience. This allowed subsequent artists to maintain a core R&B audience that was still able to permeate the pop market, especially in the 90s. Quote, I don't know how to sing black, and I don't know how to sing white either, she protested to Essence in 1990. I know how to sing. Music is not a color to me, it's an art. End quote. She admitted, however, that she purposefully determined the sound of her albums and that her voice sounded more polished and appropriate on them than it did during her live performances, which featured more characteristically black vocal stylings. But regardless of the criticism she received, her success was simply undeniable. Thanks to her talent and the Arista marketing machine, she was able to project her stardom beyond the United States and become an international superstar, advocating for the liberation of Nelson Mandela in South Africa and performing One Moment in Time, the Olympic anthem for the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games. Still, she was fully aware.
I know this is a little bit off, but when is her movie supposed to be coming out?
of the price she had to pay to become famous. Creating Whitney Houston meant silencing Nippy from Newark and keeping her secrets hidden, like the fact that her parents were actually divorced or her alleged same-sex relationship with her friend Robin Crawford.
Oh, that was Barry White in the crowd? She had that effect to her, no cap. Get it out.
Tonight, as our forces fight, they and their families are in our prayers. May God bless each and every one of them and the coalition forces at our side in the Gulf, and may He continue to bless our nation, the United States of America.
10 days after the announcement of the beginning of the Gulf War by President Bush, Whitney Houston was invited to perform the national anthem at the 25th Super Bowl in Tampa, Florida. That edition of the event was a unique moment during which politics, sport, and pop culture became one. She would declare after her performance, quote, "A lot of our daughters and sons were overseas fighting. I could see in the stadium, I could see the fear, the hope, the intensity, the prayers going up. I just felt like this is the moment." And it was hope. We needed hope, you know, to bring our babies home. End quote. Today, her rendition of the American national anthem is simply remembered as the greatest of all time. She performed the Star-Spangled Banner with a rare sense of confidence and an authority that, in the eyes of many, reflected the spirit of the national anthem and matched how the United States sought to envision itself during the Gulf War. Fierce, confident, and triumphant. For generations, African Americans have held reservations about the Star-Spangled Banner. The NAACP designated James Weldon Johnson's poem, "Lift Every Voice and Sing," as the Negro national anthem in 1904, partially to reflect this ambiguity. When a patriotic hymn was required,
you an artist and you mess up singing that, you might as well pack it up because they're gonna clown you forever.
Black leaders frequently chose "My Country 'Tis of Thee" or "America the Beautiful." At the March on Washington, Martin Luther King Jr. drew on the first, Ray Charles immortalized the second. Yet her performance wowed audiences so much that it became a symbol for the entire country. Whitney Houston, an African-American woman born in August 1963, just 19 days before the March on Washington, now singing the national anthem in front of millions. Some viewed her as some type of motherly figure meant to heal and nurture the nation, others as proof that America had moved past its legacy of disenfranchisement along racial and gender lines. Writer Cinque Henderson declared it the most influential performance of a national song since Marian Anderson sang "My Country 'Tis of Thee" on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial on the eve of the Second World War. Daphne A. Brooks adds, quote, "Whitney Houston willed herself into America's narrative of freedom and democracy through the sheer crushing command of her voice. That day, she cemented her title as the voice of the post-civil rights."
Honestly, I'm gonna say this, and I might say it in the end too. Won't nobody ever be able to sing like Whitney Houston. No cap.
Era, end quote. After the war ended, she was invited to perform at a televised performance named "Welcome Home Heroes." She seductively sang "Saving All My Love for You," "All the Men That I Need," or "I'm Your Baby Tonight," for 3,500 servicemen and women returning from the Gulf War, entering a lineage of female entertainers who entertained American troops during various wars that comprises Marlene Dietrich and Marilyn Monroe. Yet, in her specific case, her grandiose demonstration of patriotism on a large scale had an added layer of significance. It effectively allowed white Americans to believe that their country had become colorblind. Beyond the borders of the United States, she would become even more recognizable following the release of The Bodyguard the following year. Being cast in a film let Whitney Houston join the ranks of Barbra Streisand, Cher, and Diana Ross as singers who successfully transitioned into acting. Unlike Diana Ross, whose acting career began and concluded with all-black films created inside the Motown world, she came from a new generation in which emerging media formats and cultural trends offered the prospect of a vast, multicultural audience. This was made possible in part by the pairing of Whitney Houston, a black pop singer, and Kevin Costner, a white actor. For years, Hollywood had shown interracial romances, most memorably in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. These films in their day helped usher in a tidal change in both Hollywood and America's attitudes. But there was always an underlying stigma. Around the early 90s, the stigma began to fade and protagonists in interracial relationships were allowed to engage in dramatic conflicts that transcended race. There are several points of contention in The Bodyguard that contribute to the stormy nature of the relationship between the two protagonists, but none of them has anything to do with race. It's worth noting that if you were a resident of the Philippines, Brazil, or Nigeria in the early 90s, The Bodyguard may have been your first exposure to Whitney Houston's influence on a wide scale. Not only did the picture create the best-selling film soundtrack of all time, which Whitney Houston produced, but it also started a tour that took her beyond the countries she had previously visited. Thanks to this performance, she successfully achieved a subtle yet meaningful transition from international pop star to global icon. Besides, her public persona would also change during the same period. She got married to R&B singer Bobby Brown in 1992. In Every Little Step, a recent book by him, he explains that she essentially managed to do two things by getting married to him: reclaim her blackness and define herself as a strictly heterosexual woman. She started adding substantially more R&B to her sound as early as 1990 with the release of her third album, I'm Your Baby Tonight, and it was around that time that she started appearing increasingly frustrated with her public image as an immaculate diva wearing long satin gowns.
To think that I'm just this very shy, very coy, very reclusive kind of person who lives this very secret kind of life and, who does nothing but probably walks around in long dresses all day with high heels and stuff like that is totally wrong with that. I'm that shy that I am withdrawn, which is not true at all.
Okay.
She paid tribute to Shaka Khan with her cover of I'm Every Woman in 1992 and played in two other movies with an all-African American cast and greater focus on the black experience, Waiting to Exhale in 1995 and The Preacher's Wife in 1996. That same year, a reporter for the UK paper The Telegraph profiled her and kept noting with a faint hint of surprise that she really was black. Quote, "A lilting hint of black American accent comes into her voice when she gets excited," he wrote, and her new movie The Preacher's Wife has become a very black film in which all the characters are authentically black.
What's going on with her new movie that's supposed to be coming out I think next year? I don't know exactly when. Y'all let me know.
As for her private life, she nurtures a black marriage, end quote. In 2018, the culture critic Soraya Nadia MacDonald described Whitney's predicament as a textbook case of double consciousness, this complex feeling of two-ness, of disparate and competing thoughts, strivings and ideals experienced by black individuals navigating through Western society. Constance Grady adds, quote, "Houston was apparently stifled by the work of reconciliation she constantly had to do. She was also traumatized by childhood sexual abuse and by the marriage to Brown she would later describe as emotionally abusive. She had been a casual drug user since her teens, but she seems to have begun dealing with addiction in earnest by 1992, around the same time she also began exploring ways to integrate her blackness into her public image. She was rebelling on a lot of levels at that time, in ways both constructive and deeply self-destructive." End quote. She eventually released My Love Is Your Love, her first studio album in 8 years, in 1998. It was composed of mid-tempo R&B, hip-hop soul, pop, reggae, and torch songs produced by musicians such as Whitney Soul Shock, and
that song reminds me of Michael Jackson, Hold My Hand.
Colin, Missy Elliott, Wyclef Jean, David Foster, and Babyface. The articulation of global stardom with an unambiguous performance of blackness she sought to achieve eventually became possible in the late 90s thanks to a social-cultural context in which black culture had become synonymous with global popular culture. But by then, her journey towards a more authentic expression of her identity was not the only struggle she was dealing with. On the 1999 tour she embarked upon to promote both My Love Is Your Love and her then forthcoming Greatest Hits album, she gained a reputation for rash and last-minute cancellations, pulling out of 5 of 24 scheduled dates, some as little as 15 minutes beforehand. Burt Bacharach removed her in 2000 from an Oscars performance when she started singing the wrong song during rehearsal. Later that year, she unexpectedly backed out of her performance at Clive Davis's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. In 2001, she appeared on stage during a Michael Jackson tribute performance, looking so frail that the sounds of people gasping could be heard across the arena. From that moment on, public concern about her health grew rapidly.
I'm going to show you the picture.
Well, that's a bad shot.
Well, it may be a bad shot, but this is real. I mean, the bones.
Then came her infamous 2002 interview with Diane Sawyer, in which she was extensively asked about her personal life. She would admit for the first time that she used drugs, but she would make sure to let the public know 2 things. She was not poor, and she was not fat.
I've always been a thin girl. I'm not going to be fat ever. Let's get that straight. Whitney is not going to be fat ever. Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack.
Though her career and personal reputation were in free fall, she was determined to hold on tight to black respectability.
She made sure she set the record straight. She said, "I will never be fat."
Even if it involved making classist and fatphobic comments in the process. After all, she wasn't the stereotypical black woman living in the projects and doing crack. She was Whitney Houston, a highly accomplished lady living in a nice neighborhood and doing cocaine. Throughout the 2000s, she would become a regular tabloid target marked for her drug habit, her tumultuous marriage, her quote-unquote bungled life performances, and her failing career. In 2006, a series of pictures of drugs scattered around her bathroom was released by the National Enquirer and was immediately picked up by tabloids. The woman formerly viewed as America's sweetheart was described as, quote, the secretly bisexual beauty spending days amid piles of garbage, smoking crack, using sex toys to satisfy herself, and ignoring her personal hygiene.
Is this true?
She was also mocked in popular media, including in the sitcom American Dad, and it seemed that the old stereotypes she distanced herself from throughout her career were more than ever attached to her. Quote, the horrible threat that Houston had avoided so carefully for so long, the image of the welfare queen, the racist stereotype of the poor black woman from a broken home whose body is dirty and driven by lust, it all began to loom over Houston. The media particularly likes this kind of story because it plays into stereotypes of black degradation. Scholar Craig Werner said in a Salon article in 2006, the specific squalor of the Whitney Houston crack story, that part of it is racialized. There's the idea that crack is a black drug. It's a ghetto story, and it shows no matter how high they rise, this is how they all fall, end quote. More quote-unquote serious news publications would also express concern, but not really because of the personal distress in which Whitney Houston found herself, but because they believed she had wasted her talent. Contemplating the degradation of the voice that had delivered a plethora of hits and the best rendition of the national anthem was simply inconceivable. Against the odds, she eventually showed a desire to make radical changes to her personal life and career trajectory, first by divorcing Bobby Brown in 2007, and second by releasing I Look to You, her first album in 7 years.
My favorite song.
In 2009, she sat down for a comeback interview with Oprah. The narrative of the interview was that Whitney Houston, having successfully completed rehab and divorced Bobby Brown, was now past her struggles with addiction. As she was interviewing her, Oprah Winfrey played the old footage of her singing the Star-Spangled Banner and read the following quote.
There's a wonderful quote by the LA Times. They said, "The pain and frankly disgust that so many pop fans felt during Houston's decline was caused not so much by her personal distress as by her seemingly careless treatment of the national treasure that happened to reside within her." Wow. The national treasure. Heavy.
As Whitney Houston had come to embody America, her voice no longer belonged to her. It belonged to the country. Quote, "This trope of Houston's voice as America's possession," says Constance Grady, plays into the fetishization of the black body. What is valuable about Houston is not her personhood, but the athletic force of her vocal cords. End quote. As a consequence, I Look to You was not just a comeback album. It would be held as proof that the voice had finally redeemed herself and made the change everyone expected her to.
Sing that shit. Cool. He just had that image, no cap.
Hello, everyone. I'm Don Lemon, live at the CNN World Headquarters in Atlanta. You're looking at that picture of Whitney Houston, and it does say 1963 to 2012 because CNN has confirmed that Whitney Houston has died at the age of 48.
In 2012, Houston was found dead in a hotel bathtub with drugs in her system. The expected outpouring of grief ensued, with family members, friends, and business partners remembering her not simply as a talent, but as a person. But the immediate reaction from the press was one of confusion and astonishment, even outrage at times, with the continued feeling that her gift had been wasted. A national treasure forever lost. At least, that's what we thought a couple of years ago. In 2021, her estate exhumed her likeness for a 6-month Las Vegas residency. Thanks to the power of technology, she accessed the very small circle of celebrities whose gifts are so priceless that they are objectified, fetishized, and monetized even after their death. She's now performing as a hologram almost 10 years after her death, with her body and voice in better shape than ever. This time, she won't arrive late, and she won't be too tired to perform. Whitney Houston, the supreme diva wearing long satin gowns, is now back. But Nippy, the lady from Newark who just wanted to live her life, is gone forever. Whitney Houston was allowed to be America's black sweetheart, but only if she followed the rules laid out by white America. During the Reagan and Bush 1 presidencies, her voice singing across the color lines was viewed as a sign that America's systemic racism was something of the past, and her hugely successful career became a study in the flawless creation of a
what do you think led to Whitney Houston's downfall? Do you think it was the drug use? Do you think it was the lifestyle? Do you think it was her low key being controlled? Like, what do you really think led to her death also? Like, and like, let me know what's your opinion on that. I'm gonna be in the comment section with y'all.
Massive, multi-talented, globally renowned macro celebrity. But Whitney Houston would constantly wrestle to determine where, when, and how she could express her true self, if that was ever possible. As her sense of individuality grew, she became unable to properly navigate through an environment that had accepted Whitney Houston but was never meant to welcome Nippy. She was first questioned, then criticized, then mocked, and finally vilified for not doing what she was supposed to do with her gift. In spite of the plethora of information that has been released since her death, Whitney Houston remains an elusive figure hiding in plain sight. Though we may be unsure of who we are looking at, her unique voice remains unmistakable, forever etched in our collective memory.
Voice is so soothing, man. Sing it, man. We gotta listen to this, man. Damn. Yo, these documentaries be going so fast. Once again, shout out to Angel Joy Niece. I hope I'm saying it right. Get in the comment section down below. Let me know what y'all think about the whole Whitney Houston situation. And me personally, I don't care who tried to tear her down. I'ma still love Whitney Houston as an artist. With that being said, I appreciate y'all for all the love and support. Once again, going into the new year, do not plan anything. Just go with the flow. You know what I'm saying? Do what you're supposed to do, and things will come your way. Love is love, and I'm gonna catch you on the next video.